Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. Today we are joined by Sam Williams.
Hello.
Cal Wing.
Hello.
Hi, Carl.
Hello.
And Bruce Fitzpatrick.
Hello.
As always, you can get in touch on @CookieJarGolf on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And gents, it's been a long time. How are we all doing?
Getting bored. Must admit.
I mean, I think we should probably let our listeners know we are adhering to the lockdown and doing this virtually, aren't we? You know,
Absolutely.
Staying at home, staying safe.
We've got some fantastic remote technology, haven't we?
It's just been so boring, though, hasn't it?
I know, but I do think, times like this, you realise there's a lot more important things out there than golf, and it's nice to know that by doing this, we are kind of collectively helping solve the problem of COVID. And you know what? Actually doing it through videos isn't too bad, actually, and it's working quite nicely.
Exactly. You just look for the positives, and this is our off season. Fine. Plenty to work on.
The bit I'm struggling with is this is starting to get a bit too comfortable. I'm starting to find it a bit too easy to stay at home and do absolutely nothing. The day's going to come when I have to go back to work, and it's not going to be pleasant.
Well, I'm just sat in the living room in full golf gear, golf shoes, just in a dark room, meditating, thinking about my rounds, starting up again in June, and trying to do some positive visualization. So I'd recommend that if you're
Are
bored,
those
Tom.
positive affirmations I can see on the wall behind you there, Bruce?
Yeah. I've started writing things down and then framing them just to really, focus on the mental side of things.
I like it. Carl, how have you been keeping yourself busy with the golf game?
Lots of reading, actually. Various books, magazines, etc., journals.
Rolling a lot of putts on the Astro still?
Yeah, bit of putting. That's got to be a little bit boring. I've sort of probably moved inside onto the old, know what the craze is. What are those little things you putt to that everyone seems to have?
Oh, the little stopper thing. Yeah, it like rolls
The
up.
perfect putt.
Perfect putt, that's it.
Looks irritating.
Yeah, it looks like something else. Probably not anything to do with golf, but
Phallic.
yeah. But that's fine. It's other than that, I'd pay a lot of money to play 18 holes right now.
I'm concerned that when I go back to golf, I'm not going to have enough swing thoughts. I might have to start thinking about what they were. I mean, I was probably rattling through about 15, 20 swing thoughts by the time I'd finished.
Per round.
When we stopped. Yeah, so I don't know. I might need to try and get them all crammed back in. That really helps the swing, I find.
I think it will be interesting. It feels like it's going to go one of two ways. Like you'll get some people come back who will just have probably quite a quiet mind and go and shoot the lights out. And then there'll probably be other people who literally can't make contact because they've not swung a club or just not really hit a golf ball properly in the best part of a month or 2 months or however long it's going to end up going on for this lockdown. But it'll be interesting for sure to see how people react to it when the golf courses are open.
There's no doubt absence certainly makes the heart grow fonder, and it's true for golf for me right now. The one saving grace is reading a bit of Bob Rotella. So same as you, Cal, been sort of turning through a few books. Our followers on Instagram will have seen a few shares of what we've been reading. But Rotella's been pretty interesting. So like you're talking there about swing thoughts, Tom, I guess kind of coming into when we get back, loosen up a bit, loosen the shoulders and have some trust that the swing's still there. But same as you, I'm not quite sure what a full range shot is going to feel like in 6 or 8 weeks' time.
You got through Tom Doak's book as well, didn't you?
Oh, it was a peach, an absolute peach. Haven't read a book by a course architect before. Obviously, a lot of the great written works were done kind of way back in the golden era of course design in the sort of 1920s and around that era. You've got some of the huge people like Simpson. Some of the works that were written then by people like Mackenzie, etc. But Doak's is really cool. Like it's written for the modern golfer. Kind of talks a lot about stuff like the the modern game, how that's blending in with old course design, and really echoes, I think, a lot of the stuff we've already talked about, which is not a case of just stick the tees back over and over again, actually kind of using kind of the core architectural principles around golf course design. So for anyone bored at home, missing golf, and keen to turn the pages on something good, definitely Anatomy of a Golf Course is a good read.
And Carl, what have you been reading that's really excited you?
I've just finished the Grand Slam. Sam will remind me of the author. Who is it?
Mark Frost.
Mark Frost. Which was a good read, all about the life of Bobby Jones and his career leading up to his Grand Slam, and as he pretty much retired as that was completed. Really great read, really. It's a shame I'd sort of just as the book finished, he was just diving into his sort of life at Augusta, really, and buying that plot of land with a friend and starting up, really. So I think there are other books on that of how Augusta started and leading into the Masters, etc.
At the risk of providing spoiler alerts on that book, he goes on to win all 4 majors in 1930. I'm sure most of the people will know that. However, there is a nice little excerpt from where he played. I think it was in Pebble Beach, right? Do you remember that? He played in Pebble Beach. I think he missed the cut, or he had a free afternoon or something like that. And he went over to play a course that he'd heard about on the Monterey Peninsula, which was, of course, Cypress Point, and it was just totally blown away. Couldn't believe what he saw. Heard that it was designed by Mackenzie, and then when the opportunity came to design his kind of his masterpiece, his Sistine Chapel, if you will, he wanted to kind of collaborate with Mackenzie. And there's some nice shots that I've seen floating around on Twitter recently from one of our good friends of Jones and Mackenzie designing it. So it's just not, it's a really good it's a good book in history of the game, particularly from what is a key era.
I'd love to check that out. I've read Mark Frost's other book, The Match, which talks about
Hogan. I might go on to that.
Oh, that is incredible.
Worth a read.
Just to set the scene for listeners, that is about I think it's a famous businessman in California who's at a party one evening, and he ends up saying that he's got 2 amateurs working for him, amateur golfers, Ken Venturi and Harvey Ward, who he says are just the best players in the world, and there's no one out there who could beat them. And he's, proclaiming this quite sort of arrogantly, if you will. And someone says, "I'll take that bet." And he walks out the room, makes a couple of phone calls, and comes back in and says, "Yeah, I've got 2 players who'll take on Ward and Venturi. I've got Ben Hogan and Byron Nelson." And they end up playing a better ball match around Cypress Point, and it's just incredible. I won't give away any more, but Mark Frost, he always seems to deliver the goods.
Interesting. And final thing, because we are 8 minutes in, or 8 minutes 45 in, I believe, and well and truly off topic. But you've also just come through on the Golfer's Journal, and that's been a little bit exciting. Just tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, I'm on to journal number 2. So Golfer's Journal, for anyone who doesn't know, it's publication based. The guys are based out in California, and but it's just golf literature from all over the world. And for our friend of the pod, Tom Coyne, is heavily involved, and he runs their podcast side as well. And there's 4 issues, so 1 a quarter, and they just cover absolutely anything and everything, really. And it's just they're pieces of art. They literally are. They're so well put together. Some amazing photography, amazing stories, and just some great insights, which it's
not
well
to
worth
be
a read.
confused with other monthly golf publications. This
exactly.
is a
There's
piece of
very,
quality.
very limited on any sort of what they call commercials or advertisements, that sort of thing. It really is sort of handpicked stuff, and looks great on the bookshelf as well.
And how many are they up to now? How many books?
So I think I've got 11. And I think number 12 is due to arrive in the next few weeks, which will obviously be for Q2 this year.
But that's an exciting day when that pops through the letterbox.
They're a decent read. I mean, I'm breaking into number 2, and although I was finishing off the other book, it's they're a good read. They really are. Some good content in there, and not I wouldn't say you're typically sort of flicking through and rushing it like some of the other magazines. It's,
quite unique, actually. It seems that
Yeah.
it covers a lot about the sort of history of the game and the architecture and the amateur game. And it's not, as you say, it's not this sort of weekly or monthly magazine that's just cover to cover with ads about the latest driver technology. There's actual substance to a lot of what they're talking about, isn't there? And
Bruce
Exactly.
putting
you
a
know,
shameless plug in for the President's Putter edition, I think.
I was going to say,
Well,
you in there?
Funny,
You featured
funny you
in
should
there,
say
Bruce.
that because there is a massive 8-page spread on the President's Putter in
I
the
didn't know
second
that.
one. that
I've
I'm
not got
halfway
Shameless,
in.
Bruce. Absolutely
Yeah.
shameless.
I had no idea. I had no
They
idea.
only do really good stories about really good golfers.
Big amateur
I-
events and some really interesting stuff in there.
I had no idea. I had no idea about that. I'm not going to nibble.
But right, Tom, what's on the agenda today?
Well, we're recording this on the 13th of April, which is obviously the day after the Masters should have finished. So we're going to have our picks for the Masters and what we think would have happened. And first of all, let's start with the current President's Putter holder. Bruce, what do you think would have happened in the Masters?
I would like to think Rory would have finally got
I
a
hope
career
so.
Grand Slam. I feel, you know, he did a podcast I think it was just before the Players was cancelled, which it was released last week, and it was quite interesting listening to and just hearing about, you know, his sort of approach to golf at the moment and how he feels like his game has been trending over the last couple of years. I mean, just looking back at his finishes prior to the the lockdown and the cancellation of all world sport, you know, he's gone tied 5th at the Arnold Palmer, 5th in Mexico, tied 5th at the Genesis, tied 3rd at the Farmers, 4th in Dubai at the season-ending DP World, obviously won the WGC, he's come tied 3rd at the Zozo. Basically, you can go all the way back to the Open where he missed the cut at Portrush, and I think he only finished outside the top 20 once, which was at the Dunhill. So I think, yeah, that form and just the place that he seems to be in mentally would all bode well for him finally. Sam, what do you reckon to Rory's chance of winning the Masters?
I think it's got to happen at some stage. The guy's stats are off the charts.
I think he's.
Thanks for that insight.
No, what I don't know what you're supposed to say, because you know it's one tournament in a 52-week-a-year season that these guys play. Clearly, he's got to string it together against some world-class players out there. So he's putting himself in the right position. If you look at his stats and start saying, well, 2020 so far this year, 6th strokes gained off the tee, 3rd approaches to the green. His stats putting are never that high. His best putting stats he's had in the last 5 years was 2019, and that was 24th. So actually, he's putting himself in all the right spaces. His record, his results speak for themselves. And I don't think he's got that bad a winning average. He gets kind of slammed for being a bit of a choker, but as we've talked about before on the pod, he's winning something like a third of the times when he's got a 54-hole lead. So I honestly think Rory will get it done, but the Masters is a highly competitive affair. Look at last year with Woods. Woods came through in the end, but there could have been, I think there were 6 or 7 players last year who could have easily got that done just with a few putts going in on the back nine.
But every year that he doesn't do it, it's just more and more pressure.
I don't know.
You kind of feel like he's got to do it quickly.
He's got
I
time
think
on
he's
his
past
side.
that mentally. Yeah, I do
got time on
think
his
he's
side.
overcome that.
I mean, how old was Tiger? What was he? 44 when he won last year? Something like that, roughly. And Rory's only, I think he's turning 31 next month. So he's got plenty of time on his hands. And he's as you say, I think he's freewheeling it now. He's playing great. It's almost, I think he's finally learned to sort of shrug his shoulders at bad results now. That doesn't really seem to bother him. And as you say, he could have literally won the last 5 or 6 tournaments probably.
And he's desensitised himself to it, I think, partly through his involvement with the media. If you watch him week in, week out, if he shoots 100, not that happens very often, or if he shoots 62, he puts himself in front of the media every week. He talks about it. He's relaxed. He's calm. He's quite comfortable with where his game's at. And he's got the scars, and sometimes you need some of those scars to help you build up a bit of toughness on, closing straight in these big tournaments. So clearly he's doing all the right things to put himself in position. Will that translate into a win? Will he will he be one of many players to have never lifted, to win the Masters?
I think he's
Possible.
too good for it not to happen at some point.
Sam, who are you picking?
We all know Sam's going to go with Leash, don't we?
You going Leash?
So I just want to talk a little bit about Mark Leishman, because he's currently 15th in the world. He's coming in fairly hot into the Masters. He finished 7th in the Arnold Palmer, 8th in the Genesis Invitational. He was 7th in the Farmers Insurance. He's been on the tour for 15 years now, and he's 7th in the FedEx rankings. You don't get there by accident if you can't hold it together, particularly when the pressure's on. So I think, we talked about it before. I think the tournament favours people who've been around for a while as well. I know some people have won there, with relatively low tenure. So people like Spieth were relatively young in their career when they won there. But I still stand by it. Leishman, I just hope he holds his form coming into November, because that would be the world's greatest.
Who would you fancy in your hypothetical 2020 Masters if it was concluded yesterday, Cal?
Looking at last year, and I think he's a bit of an outsider, similar along the sort of same lines as Leishman, was Patrick Cantlay. He's obviously been top amateur there in the past. I think he finished 3rd last year, something like that. Had a good chance.
He was the one who went on the run, didn't he? On the
he
back
did.
nine.
He went crazy, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I just think again, it'd be someone like that, maybe before someone as obvious as Rory.
I think that's a pretty good call. I mean, don't forget, Cantlay's top 10 in the world, right? So,
yeah,
he's right up there in terms of quality. And people he's kind of got that Mark Leishman factor in, so much as I think people just skip over him because he's not a DJ, a Spieth, a McIlroy or Woods. People just kind of skip over and go, it's a bit of a second-rate player. Guy's world class.
Yeah, just because it's not fireworks and fist pumps and controversial sort of sound bites doesn't mean that he's not an incredible player in his own right. I definitely agree. Moving on to maybe a broader discussion about who this enforced break's been good for and maybe who it hasn't been so good for. We obviously talked about Rory's recent run of form and how he'd probably like to, in an ideal world, to have kept on playing. Who out there do you think has benefited from this enforced layoff?
Benefiting you most, you think,
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to put it out there. I don't know what you guys think. I'm going to say Jordan Spieth straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I was thinking about that the other day. I thought I was probably watching a couple of his, recent major wins over the last sort of 4 years, and I was as I was watching it, I couldn't help but think, he's sort of been so up and down with his game the last 12 to 18 months, and actually thought, you know what, he's probably grinding his arse off at the moment. I'm sure he's got a facility where he can just go and hit balls.
So I think the Jordan Spieth thing's interesting, because I'd have to double check the stats, but I'm pretty sure this will be the first time he's outside the top 50 in the world rankings for at least 5 years. Now, if I go back, his best finish since October was T9th at the Pebble Beach AT&T Pro-Am. If you remember, he shot 67 on the final day, and I think the field average was like well over par that day. It was fast greens, it was windy, it was an unbelievable score. That kind of got him right into the mixer. Apart from that, it's been really average. Now, if I just kind of talk to you about Jordan's stats, 2020 season, which obviously includes partly some of the wraparound and stuff towards the back end of last year, he's 195th strokes gained off the tee, 198th strokes gained approach, 90th strokes gained putting. Now, if I look back in 2017, where he was absolutely crushing it, that year he won the AT&T, he won the Open, and the week before the Open he won the Travellers. He was 44 strokes gained off the tee, 48th putting, and he was 2nd strokes gained approach. That is a huge delta in the space of a few years in terms of where your game's at. And I don't know, you lads got any thoughts on kind of what that, cause would be, or,
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what I'm like. I'm a bit of a sort of a golf swing technique like geek and nerd, and I like, just sort of listening to what various instructors or coaches out there have to say on these kind of topics. And yeah, obviously there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of commentary on Spieth and maybe where he's gone wrong over the last few years. mean, Brandel Chambly summarises it by saying that it's just overcomplicated golf instruction, but there's obviously more to it than that, and it would be fascinating to know exactly what he's working on. But it seems like he's tried, just from a layman's perspective, from what I can tell, it seems like he's trying to roll the face open a lot more on his backswing and try and get away from the stuff that he did really well as a junior, which was more of a kind of shut-faced, and then that famous bent left arm. Some people call it a chicken wing through impact, where the face is actually really stable, but he's kind of just like driving it down the line rather than kind of rolling his forearms over. It's more of a sort of cricket kind of forward defensive type motion, it seems. And it just seems like he's moved away from that. And I'm not sure whether he feels like he needs to change his technique to go on and win even more majors. But to my mind, it seems pretty strange that someone who's, had arguably the second best season in modern golf history in 2015 when he won 2 majors and a whole bunch of other regular tour events, and he's basically pursuing something technically that he's never really done. I don't know what you guys think about it, but.
With Spieth, it's a difficult one. I think from memory, his coach is Cameron McCormack, who I think Cameron might be his only ever coach. I'm not sure, but certainly in my opinion, I mean, doesn't really count for much, but if anything, but definitely worth getting a second opinion, I would have thought, whether it's going to Butch or one of the others.
There's some guys out there. Yeah, there's some guys out there like Jeff Smith and Kelvin Miyahara. I think that's how you say it, at least. Jeff Smith and Kelvin, they've both put some pretty interesting things out there about, or pretty detailed, breakdowns on video of where Spieth's techniques change over the last couple of years. But, I mean, you never want to make sort of outrageously bold comments when you don't have the full facts of the situation. But I think I totally agree with you, Cal. Like, it seems like they're changing something that, has been a pretty consistent part of his swing since he was a junior. And maybe it's time to just simplify things and maybe go back to where he was before, technically wise, and just accept that there are going to be little mini peaks and troughs. But if you try and radically overhaul your technique, you're going to make those ups and downs a lot more severe, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
What I think about Spieth is that, I think this all was facilitated by probably more of a mental deficiency, and that perhaps his head wasn't in the right place. And then just
what makes you say that?
It's. Well, around about the collapse of the Masters, he would say, or he has said, that his swing before that he felt like he was in the right place and that he always had the pulls on the final day. But I wonder whether he just had this, tremendous success early in his career, and then what probably felt like a tremendous fall, and felt like, obviously it's my swing's fault, it's not my head's fault, and I need to go and address that, instead of just thinking, well, golf comes with its highs and lows, and I've just got to stick with what I got. I know it works. I've won I've won majors with this swing. Let's just crack on through it. I don't know.
My only counterpoint to that, Tom, is that after that, infamous collapse in 2016 when Willett ended up overtaking him, he did come back in pretty serious fashion at the Open in 2017 and, showed real character when there was the whole incident and the delay over finding his ball and then having to take a drop on the driving range and then just going on that absurd run after where he went birdie, eagle, birdie, or whatever. He played the last 4 holes in 5 under. Yeah, where he just really rallied. There's a lot of people out there who say that the overarching strength about Spieth's game is his mental fortitude. So maybe it's obviously, as we all know, it's such a difficult game. There's so many variables, but
it's different having the mental fortitude to make the ball go in the hole. That sheer will that people used to say Jack Nicklaus always had, that he just had the ability to get the ball in the hole, where I think it's different when you're not playing very well for a concerted period of time. That's a different mental capacity to say, no, just stick with this, because I've won with this. Stick with the swing, work on what I'm good at, instead of what seems like what you're saying is a complete dismantling of his technique.
Yeah.
And then
I think
They're
it's like
different kind of
Pandora's
way.
box, though, isn't it? I think when you go down that rabbit warren, it's very hard to come back out of it. And if this isn't like a sort of a 2 or 3 month spell where he started to sort of make alterations and been slightly out of form, he's still playing world class golf. Let's not get away from the point. He's playing to an incredible standard. But once you go into that process, it's very difficult to unwind it. It's not like you can just hit the reverse button and the undo and go back to, I'll just take it back to 2017 Birkdale and then we'll start again. That's unfortunately, that for all of us, that's not the way golf works. So I don't know. I think it will be really interesting to see what games Beath brings back out the other side of this. I mean, clearly limited resources and all those kind of COVID-19 kind of restrictions, but still, I'm sure he'll be doing some work. He'll be one of the people who'll be trying to use this and try and get as much out of it. I know some players are thinking, do you know what, I'm actually not going to do anything. Rory's a class example. I've not got anything to practice towards at the moment, so I'm actually just going to treat it as a holiday. Just kind of moving us on slightly, someone who's kind of, I look at statistically is quite interesting because we're kind of watching him move, I think, further and further back in official world golf rankings would be Mickelson, who's gone down a separate rabbit warren of his own with power and kind of club head speed.
Calves of Adonis.
Yeah, he's 49. By the time he gets to the other side of June, I think he's old enough to play seniors. I don't think he will play seniors personally
He'll never play
immediately.
seniors.
But I mean, what game does he bring back? At some point, older cars take a little bit more oiling up, don't they, when they come back on the track? I don't know what happens.
I don't know. He's on this coffee diet, isn't he? He's lost a lot of weight. He's fasting, whatever he's calling it. I think Phil's too good. He'll come back in good form. His short game's just phenomenal, and that's what gets him around. End of the day, his driving's always loose, but as long as you keep it relatively near to the second cut, I think he'll get it round. I think he'll keep going pretty competitively. I'm going to say at least mid-50s.
Do you think there'll be the day where someone just taps him on the shoulder and goes, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Phil, that's enough.
Yeah.
Why do you come and play? Why do you come and play out in the Tour of Champions with us?
I wouldn't be surprised if Phil had a sort of kind of mini renaissance, as it were, when he gets a little bit older and loses some of that club head speed that he's put on recently, because I don't think his game, you could maybe correct me if I'm wrong on this, Statsman Sam, but I don't think he's actually played that much better, or in fact, I think he's probably declined a little bit in terms of his world ranking and his overall consistency since he's tried to pack on a load of club head speed with the driver. And so maybe when he gets a little bit older and he kind of goes back to swinging more within himself, judged over the last few years, he might just find that he's back competing at the absolute highest level of the game again more regularly.
Yeah, I mean, he's outside the top 50. He hasn't been outside the top 50 since I've been driving a car, I don't think. So, I'm 34 actually now. So I think that tells us everything we need to know. It's going backwards and backwards. I did do a little bit of research on Phil before we came out. So he's 49 years old at the moment. This year, so since we're in 2020. He's missed 4 cuts on the PGA Tour. The only one result he's had where he's finished was the AT&T, and that was where he finished 3rd. Where he was actually defending his title. That's right. Yeah. So
and he basically just timed it for a week, is what some people are saying.
Yeah, and he likes Pebble. He won there last year. It's a course he's comfortable with. He's got an obscene short game. Don't forget, smallest acreage, I think, greens with the exception is that Hilton Head. I think that's the end of the.
Harbour Town.
Yeah, Harbour Town, that's it. And the smallest greens. So it clearly favours a player who can play some simply obscene short shots around the green, which is clearly what happened. I'm quite interested to know your take in terms of players this is starting to impact and what will they come back to?
Want to get your thoughts on Tyrrell. I mean, he's obviously trending in the right direction with a great win at Bay Hill.
Well, if he won the Masters virtually, he would have been our back-to-back winner.
But how do you think this is going to affect him? I mean, he's obviously had that big layoff in November, December with a wrist injury, and he's come back. You can't say a better player, but he's certainly come back just all guns blazing. He's won at Bay Hill, and he was What do we think this break is going to do? Because he was definitely going into the Masters with some heat.
Well, he likes his video games, doesn't he? He's a prolific gamer, I think. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just, I don't know, buckles down and gets to like top 50 in the world on Fortnite or something stupid. I'm going to go out on a limb here and potentially look extremely foolish. And if anyone wants to come back at me on this,
we'll tell you. We will tell you. Be assured.
I think that there seems to be a trend amongst the more consistent top players in the world, and maybe it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense, but those guys who are just really, really, who have played really well over the last couple of years are treating this lockdown as a chance to just completely switch off and just get some much-needed downtime and know that their swings are still going to be there when they come back. Whereas I look at someone like Justin Rose, who's obviously a phenomenal player, but has really struggled by his usual high standards over the last year. I could imagine someone like him, going on an indoor simulator, trying to find the secret to this swing trying to find the secret to his positions and just, working on the technical minutiae and just coming out and not competing at the level that we know he's capable of. Whereas the guys who seem to freewheel it, the Hattons who will just go and play video games for a couple of months when they've got a wrist injury, the McIlroys, etc., might just come back out refreshed, reinvigorated, and just go and tear it up. That's my hypothesis.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think a lot of these guys...
I'd agree.
Yeah. This isn't about going into an indefinite period of time where they don't know when they're playing tournament golf next and bring in a level of intensity that's obscene. Actually, it's about, a lot of these guys got families, they've got stuff outside of golf they want to do. Back to the conversation we're having recently with Iona talking about the practice she does and did with Dave Aldred, where you're looking at inputs only and outputs only. And when you're limited in terms of your ability to see the output, how much can you focus purely on input? Amateur golfer, I'm not a professional golfer, obviously, but how much can you learn hitting balls in a net? I don't know.
Yeah, even with a TrackMan and a great simulator, I just think you could just really lose that kind of free-flowing, even the fun element of the game by doing that. And I think for a lot of amateur golfers or aspiring young junior golfers, there's definitely a place for what Cameron McCormack and those type of people call like form work. Working in a mirror to focus on some technique or some swing changes that you've really wanted to dial in on for a while. But for the best players in the world, like, you've got to just think that their techniques are so well grooved and efficient already. What good is beating balls in a simulator or an indoor net really going to do them during the lockdown period? I think it would do more harm than good.
At the risk of stat overloading, I'm just looking at the numbers here. Can anyone here tell me the first, who's currently ranked first in 2020 for strokes gained tee to green?
Got to be Rory.
No, I reckon
I'm not sure you'll get it.
Morikawa?
No.
Westwood?
We talking top 5 in the world?
No. 21st in the world, Tyrrell Hatton. We were just talking about him. So when you look at, and bearing in mind, that is including a bit of wraparound. There's quite a bit of form going into that. And you think, fucking hell, that guy's first on tour, tee to green, obscene stats, truly obscene.
Is that PGA Tour though? I wonder how many events that's based on.
That's a good point, actually. But, the numbers speak for themselves,
It
don't
will
they?
tell you.
It does tell me. It does tell me. But I'm
Is it
still
one?
producing. No, it's 4. It's 4. But he's won 4. He's won 4. It's a good number. We digress. There is one player that I wanted to talk about where I think is going to be particularly impacted by this. And that's Brendan Todd.
Oh, yeah.
So, if you guys will indulge me, if I'm thinking about players this will impact quite heavily, Brendan Todd would be top of my list. The reason I say that is Brendan's 34 years old. He's currently ranked 54th in official world golf rankings. Now, clearly he's packing wins, so he carries exemptions with him, but he's been on tour now for 12 years. He's currently ranked 4th in the FedEx. He's had 2 wins. He obviously had the back-to-back where he did the Mayakoba Classic and the RSM in November.
It was almost 3, wasn't it?
That's right. Really close to getting 3.
The Bermuda and the Mayakoba, and then he nearly got the RSM for the 3rd, didn't he?
I mean, it's incredible. Now, he's definitely not a journeyman pro because he's playing at an extremely high level and he's winning. So I'm going to caveat this statement. But he has won 9.2 million in 12 years on tour. In the last 12 months, he's won 2.56 mil of that. So financially, massive impact there. He's coming in like white hot with form into major season, into all sorts of stuff. That must have a massive impact for him. He must be going home thinking, do you know what, this is really irritating, right?
Yeah, I mean, he, as you say, you've just outlined how prolific he's been over the last 6 or 8 months. And at risk of me eating my words, talking about tour players not making swing changes, he is someone who has, with Bradley Hughes, reinvented himself a bit, it seems, over the last couple of years. And he's gone on that run of form where I think Tiger's the only other person in the last, or Tiger was the last person to win 3 straight events. So, he's clearly in pretty elite company when he's challenging for that, accolade as well. So I totally agree. I think, he's not missed a cut in a while. He's clearly just, even if he's kind of dropped off the sort of top 5 positions in the really, really high finishes, he's still a cash machine, isn't he? So he probably would be happy that this layoff's come in. But then again, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's got a young family. Maybe he's going to relish the time to spend, relish the chance to spend some more time at home. So I might be a little bit ignorant on that one. I don't know.
The other names I jotted down, Sung Jae Im, there was a concern there. He's played considerably more events than anybody else on tour going back, a long time. Has he got a place to go back to? Kind of question mark on his welfare there. The other thing I had is Bezuidenhout. Just got into the top 50 in the world rankings, 3 events on PGA Tour, all inside top 25, shot the lights out at the Players, I think, first round, second in Dubai Desert Classic, clearly won the South African Open. Again, is that going to kind of impact him? Another similar player, really?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think mentally for a lot of them, it's. I think it would certainly do damage. Let's say if one of them had a freak accident, injured themselves, couldn't play. But the fact that everyone on tour has currently had to just press pause, I don't think it will affect them. Well, I think they're both Brendan and Christian. I think they're in pretty good places. That they've just come off. They've both had a couple of nice wins recently in the last 6 months. They're on good form. I think financially, I'd imagine they're reasonably comfortable at this point. They're not struggling for the cards or anything like that. They're both in good spots. I'd imagine they're just pretty pleased they got it in just before everything has sort of gone on hold.
Well, yeah, of course, the category that we should definitely mention are...
I think it'll be on the other side.
Yeah. The category we should mention is that those players who are struggling to keep their cards or just, very much middle of the pack. And of course the Challenge Tour and the Corn Ferry Tours as well. I mean, those guys there, can't imagine that many people there are going to be very comfortable financially. I wonder what kind of provision there is, whether they fall into, some of the guidelines that have been outlined by the government, because, if we're staring at another month or 2 of no competitive golf and potentially diminished purses as a result of fewer spectators at these events, it'd be really sad to see it have an adverse effect on some of the mini tour players and the players who aren't maybe as well established on the main tours too.
I think what's going to happen, it's going to happen across everything really, and is I don't think the world that we're going to go back into it'll be the same as what the world we left, and I think that extends to golf. I don't know whether they're going to be able to, certainly in the short term, to cope financially and have these big purses on the Challenge Tour and giving such big purses on the PGA and the European Tour. Whether that's going to be something, I think the whole world is going to have to change, and golf is just one of those things, isn't it?
Well, it's propped up by sponsors, isn't it? So, if you're taking a haircut on, employment costs, if you've taken a huge downturn in the market, you're marketing spend when it comes to golf events is probably going to be one of the first things that you chop if you're a chief exec of a kind of large business in one of these countries, or huge presence in one of these states. You're probably going to go, you know what, I'm not sure we can actually contribute in the same way to this event that we have done previously.
Well, especially since the prospect of mass gatherings, which entails or catches all live sporting events, that it seems very, very far off. It's one thing, for us to be looking forward to golf courses, our local club reopening, and even being able to go and play some other courses around the UK, because that hopefully isn't that far off. And
rarely you've got 20,000 people following you around.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, when we're talking about live sport as a whole and the prospect of tens of thousands of spectators walking around, I can't see that being permitted for quite a long time. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The players, from what I gather, the players have just been flat out cancelled after that first round, and they divided the prize fund. They divided the whole purse equally amongst all the players there. I think everyone got about $52,000 each or something like that. But yeah, I think you totally raise a valid point there, Tom, about maybe we're going to see diminished purses, at least in the short term, as it takes a while for things to sort themselves out.
Certainly on the European Tour. I think the PGA Tour is a different beast. But certainly affect the European Tour, and Sunday probably the ladies' European Tour as well. I think they were coming into sort of new spell of tournaments that had some pretty good purses. But who knows if that will still stand, as you say. It's just all up in the air, really.
But on the topic of the virus, now things are going to change. It's come out in the news in the UK recently that one of the parties, the Green Party, want to take golf courses, private golf courses, and open them up to the public for use of exercise and dog walking and stuff like that. It's interesting that comes out, because I don't think that possibly
is that municipal, Tom, or private courses? What's the
private courses?
Right.
I think all golf courses. I think it was Caroline Lucas from the Green Party. I think it was all golf courses. Was her point was that
got a bit of traction on Twitter, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because it obviously makes sense from some sort of point of view, whereas you need green space. People need to exercise, and some people don't have gardens and things like that. And if we're going to increase space between people, then that would obviously solve a problem. But I don't think that it's thought through in terms of the private members paying for a facility to be maintained. I'll
go out on a limb here, Tom. I think it's outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous. So, let me try and qualify that a little bit. We have only 3 weeks ago had to shut every single golf course up and down the land, and private clubs that were playing in a safe way, or what they deemed to be a safe way, through inverted cups, leave the flag in, social distancing, kind of not shaking hands, all those measures. We're now saying, well, I'll tell you what, they're still perfectly safe places to be, but as long as people aren't swinging their own clubs and hitting their own golf balls, it's not safe. So, absolute drivel, to be honest with you.
Well, it's Reading Golf Club just opened up and said, yeah, come use it.
Oh, really?
Which I think is interesting. Yeah, they've just said.
So opened up as a golf course, or opened up as a park?
As essentially a park.
Wow.
I don't know if they're doing something to manage people on the greens. I'm assuming so. Or perhaps
absolutely fucking ridiculous.
Perhaps they just hope they're not going to go on the greens. But
it is. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I'd go on a middle line here. I'd just say, look, it's clearly what Caroline Lucas and the Green Party is saying is well intentioned, and they obviously, are looking at this, particularly in heavily urbanised areas like London, where there is a lack of green space, and saying, look, instead of overcrowding, the main parks there, let's just open up a few of the Surrey or the Berkshire or the, even more southerly courses, and allow people to roam and maintain social distance, which is fine. But I think it's just it betrays a serious lack of understanding, and they're just not aware of like how much money and how many resources go into maintaining these facilities.
I don't think she plays the game.
Yeah.
So she won't have a clue.
Yeah, I'm going out on the limb here and saying I agree. I think it's quite easy to say, well, turn over your green space. Well, funnily enough, we've just shut down all that green space because everyone's told us it's not safe. Yeah, I feel quite strongly on it. I won't waste any more airtime on the topic because it just seems absolutely ludicrous from my point of view. But I'm happy to be told to shut up by my 3 colleagues.
Just before we wrap it up, I think it's worth a shout out as of a couple of hours ago, which I think the RNA announced that very sadly Doug Sanders has passed away. I know Doug was certainly a big character in the game, and certainly in his later years did a lot for junior golf. So I certainly think on that note, I think everyone will probably raise a glass. And
Very sad.
yeah, very sad news.
But a very good
Great
career
dress
and,
sense on
yeah,
the course. Unbelievable career. I mean,
Peacock of the fairways, I believe, which I'm, you know, I think that's a nice thing to go out with in terms of
he was like the
nickname.
forerunner to Ian Poulter, really, wasn't he? You know, before Ian Poulter came along in his crazy
big,
gold outfits.
Certainly big flair
was-
exactly.
And probably not as many sort of wide-eyed chest beating when he holds a sort of a 3-foot putt, and probably not so much of that either, I suspect.
Yeah.
No, and I don't think he was the only one to lose to Jack Nicklaus at some point. So.
Yeah, rest
Incredible
easy, Doug.
performance.
You had
Yeah,
a great
rest
life.
easy.
And so on that note, thanks very much for tuning in. We will be releasing more content later this week. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay at home, and look after yourselves. Cheers.
Adios.
Watch this.